lobster, lighthouses, and LL Bean. Quintessential Maine. If you ask someone about Maine, they may list off the 3 L's, but Maine has much more to offer than just these familiar icons. And Maine's rock-bound coast is the perfect place to start your coastal discovery vacation. Maine is known as the Pine Tree State, or Vacation Land. It's the largest of the 6 New England states in size, 33,215 square miles, with a population of only about 1.2 million. There are 16 counties, 22 cities, 424 towns, 51 plantations, and 416 unorganized townships. With 6,000 lakes, 32,000 miles of rivers and streams, 17 million acres of forest land, 2,000 islands, and over 5,000 miles of coastline, Maine's natural beauty abounds. The 65 lighthouses stationed along the coast would be reason enough alone to make it part of your coastal discovery vacation. But add in the nation's second most visited national park, Acadia, the highest seaboard peak north of Brazil, Cadillac Mountain, and breathtaking headlands and sandy beaches, and you have an exciting adventure. And there is a lot more than just natural beauty. Maine's historic and cultural attractions and many events also await you. While there is some debate about whether the explorations of Verrazano and Cabot reached the Maine coast, there is no question that by the early 17th century, Maine was on the European explorers' itineraries. In 1604, Samuel de Champlain, cartographer to Pierre de Gois, Sieur de Monts, recounts in his journals discovering the lands from St. Croix Island to Cape Cod, including a place he called Ile de Mont Desert, now Mount Desert Island, home to Acadia National Park and Bar Harbor. Over the next 75 years, both the English and the French gave land grants to eager colonists for the New World. Some of the earliest communities in Maine were established in the 1600s, including York in 1641, America's first chartered city. Today, they are the vibrant yet quaint towns that include Kittery, Falmouth, and Castine. Maine didn't become a state until 1820, but in the years between settlement and statehood, the area played a big part in a new nation's development. The first naval battle of the American Revolutionary War took place in Machias, along the down-east coast. The coast of Maine can be divided into 3 distinct areas: southern coast, mid-coast, and down-east. The southern coast begins as you cross the bridge over the Piscataqua River, entering Kittery, and ends around Freeport. Mid-coast stretches from the Freeport area to the Penobscot River, and down east finishes the coastline from the Penobscot to Calais and the Canadian border. Searching out the perfect bargain on the southern coast in Kittery's many outlet stores is an adventure all on its own. Just north of Kittery is York, America's first chartered city in 1641. There you can discover Old York Village and Old Gall. This historic building is believed by many to be the oldest remaining public building of the English colonies. Kennebunkport first became known to most Americans when George Bush became president. There is much more to see and do in Kennebunkport and surrounding Kennebunk and Cape Porpoise area known as the Kennebunks. The homes of wealthy shipbuilders and ship owners of the past still line the picturesque tree-lined streets leading into downtown with its unique shops and restaurants. Museums, including the Seashore Trolley Museum, architectural delights, and even a beach are all part of this delightful little town. The Wedding Cake House is one of the most famous homes in Kennebunk. This gingerbread-clad federal mansion was built in 1826. Today, this private residence is one of the most photographed homes in Kennebunk. Of course, the most famous house sits on Walker Point and has been the summer home of the Bushes and the Walkers for generations. There is no public access to the former president's summer home, but you can see it from several vantage points. Maine's largest city, Portland, has much to offer. You can stroll through the streets of the Old Port and encounter many quaint shops and restaurants. Or discover the Wadsworth Longfellow House, the oldest remaining residence in Portland and the first house museum in Maine. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, author of Evangeline, Courtship of Miles Standish, and many other poems of note, called Portland a jewel by the sea. Just a few more miles up the coast is Freeport, home to LL Bean, one of Maine's most famous icons. This retail giant, most famous for its hunting, fishing, and recreational gear and exceptional customer service, is open 24 hours a day, every day of the year. Stop and visit the store and pick up some things for your outdoor adventure, or order some new things to be sent back home. Nearby, there is a natural phenomenon, the desert of Maine. It's true, a real desert in the middle of a forest. The sand dune was exposed after poor farming practices at the end of the 1800s allowed soil erosion to expose the sand, probably left by a passing glacier thousands of years ago. Having seen LL Bean, the first of the three famous icons, you may want to check out Maine's second icon, lighthouses. Maine's coast has 65 of them. One of the first commissioned in Maine is the Portland Headlight. At the other end of the state is West Quoddy Light, also called the Candy Cane Light because of its red and white stripes. One of the most photographed lights is on Mount Desert Island at Bass Harbor. The lights along the Maine coast come in all shapes, sizes, and types. Follow the coast and see how many lights you can see. Entering the Mid-Coast region, take the time to explore Bath. The Bath Ironworks complex dominates the view from the bridge crossing the Kennebec River. Also on the banks of the Kennebec is the Maine Maritime Museum, with its relics from a 19th century shipyard, displays of marine art, and a shop with nautical gifts and books. The museum is part of Maine's Maritime Heritage Trail. Continuing on Route 1, you'll enter Wiscasset, which calls itself the prettiest village in Maine. Once the largest seaport north of Boston, the town today has quaint streets and lovely homes, lending credence to its slogan. Part of the town was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1973. There are many fine examples of Federal, Classical Revival, and pre-Revolutionary buildings to see, including Castle Tucker, the Musical Wonder House, and the Nichols Sortwell House. If you have time, take a side trip to Boothbay Harbor. On the Boothbay Peninsula are the towns of Boothbay Harbor, Boothbay, and Southport Island. There are shops, whale watching, sailing, and a variety of attractions, including Fort Edgecombe, built in 1808 to protect the Sheepscot River. No tour of Mid-Coast Maine would be complete without exploring the charming city of Rockland, where quaint shops, galleries, and restaurants line the streets. Maine's third L icon, lobster, is featured center stage at Rockland's Maine Lobster Festival, an annual celebration of lobster and all things Maine. Over 10 tons of lobster was served at last year's event. Rockland is also home to Maine's famous Windjammer Fleet, as well as the nationally recognized Farnsworth Art Museum. Recognized as one of the finest regional art museums in the country, the Farnsworth Collection of American Art focuses on the art of Maine. The museum's Wyeth Center, devoted to the first family of Maine painting, holds several thousand works by Andrew, M.C., and Jamie Wyeth. Right next door to Rockland is Camden, jewel of the Maine coast. Windjammers, quaint shops, and restaurants all abound in this charming village. Don't miss the many bed and breakfasts and inns in this charming coastal community. Cultural events and outdoor recreation coexist happily in this seaside resort. Crossing the suspension bridge across the Penobscot River, you will enter the Down East region. Here, overlooking the Bucksport Harbor, Fort Knox offers you a good chance to explore the underground passages of this 19th century granite fortress.